Hello and welcome to Let's Talk HR with Dr. Deneen, the talk show that spotlights HR professionals and talks about all things HR. Now get this, 16% of companies in the world are 100% remote. 44% of companies don't allow remote work. And 77% of remote workers say they are more productive when working from home. If this is where remote work is trending, how far can organizations monitor the actions of remote workers? Well, we will find out when my guest, Cindy Ettingoff, CEO and General Counsel of Memphis Legal Services, will tell us what we can and cannot do. Welcome, Cindy, to the show.
Thank you, Deneen. I am so happy to be here today.
I am so glad that you're here. Well, let's get right into it. You are a trendsetter in the legal world and have been working for a number of years in this arena. Share your professional journey.
Well, so I'm a bit of a unicorn, I guess, in the legal world, because most people either do management side or employee side, and I have done both. I started out doing strictly, exclusively management.
All right.
Then I represented a labor union, the Airline Pilots Association, and a few pipe fitters and electrical and things like that, so unions. Then I went to straight employees. So I've done a little bit of everything in terms of I've had the beauty of seeing both sides of the argument, and it actually, in my opinion, makes you a better attorney, a better representative. But I also mediate and arbitrate. So not only am I really in love with the whole litigation idea of things, but there are times when matters should be settled, and so that too is an area that I worked quite a bit in.
Well, you are a unicorn. What you don't know is that she is sought after. She speaks, keynote speaker, all of the time. I look at you as the song, Johnny Cash, I've been everywhere, man.
I was thinking I walked the line personally, but you know.
But hey, you're a trendsetter in this arena, and we really do enjoy that you're here. Now, you are the CEO and General Counsel for Memphis Area Legal Services. What services do you offer?
Okay, so Memphis Area Legal Services is a pro bono law firm. We offer free civil legal services pretty much to the poorest of the poor in Memphis, Shelby County, Fayette County, Lauderdale County, Tipton County. And so what that means is for people who you get sued and you don't have an idea of what to do, you don't know where the courthouse is or what room it is or what you're supposed to do, because you're held to the same standard as if you were represented by counsel. So you don't know whether to stand up or speak or not speak or what to wear.
Wow.
We are the place that those people turn to give them a voice that they would otherwise not have.
That is awesome. That is
really
awesome. Pro bono, you're able to come to Memphis Area Legal Services to offer help, to seek help when you may not financially be able to do so, or for whatever other reason may not be able to do so. That is an awesome work in your arena. So what keeps you in this profession?
Well, I feel very fortunate, first of all, to be able to help our community. And so that for me is one of the driving factors in staying in this work. The other part of it is, and it's kind of a confession here, I'm enough of a nerd that I love cases. I love reading the cases. I actually was incredibly excited this morning because I thought I was going to get to go argue a case tomorrow that's settled. And I was so disappointed. I thought, okay, now wait a second. I should be happy because it's settled, but I was so excited to actually get to go to federal court.
Yeah.
So there's a pleasure in doing the work, and there's a pleasure in serving our community.
And that's one of the things that we talk about in HR. You must enjoy what you do, and we can tell that you enjoy what you do. So the passion comes out. Yeah.
Thank you.
So let's get into this remote worker topic. So I've shared some statistics from earlier and how 70% of remote workers say they prefer working from home. Do you think organizations will move more toward this direction? What's your take on it?
Well, I think it's a very mixed situation, and it depends on the organization, and it depends on their structure and who the employee is and what they're doing.
Okay.
Because many employers had never worked remotely. And I think, we had talked about the fact that there is a particular employer, there's a lawsuit that has been tried, heard, and decided where the employer required all employees to work remotely. And when one of those employees, because it was in the height of COVID, and when they were asking employees, they were saying, we're returning to work, you need to return to work. And one of the employees said, I really would prefer to stay at home. My job does not require me to be present to perform it. And, oh, by the way, I have all of these other underlying conditions that make me more susceptible to COVID and make COVID much worse were I to get it.
Yeah.
And they fired her.
Mistake, right?
Right.
Mistake.
And you're like, okay. And of course, in that case, the problem is everybody worked from home. She was doing her job from home, doing it perfectly well. There was nothing about her particular job that required FaceTime. It required her to be physically present to perform it. So that goes back to answer your question. If you're an employer and you're trying to figure out, do I need these people to come in or not? Then you need to look at their job descriptions.
Yes.
And COVID made a lot of us, males included, reevaluate our job descriptions.
Yes.
COVID gave opportunities for employers too, because we are, again, the perfect example. We went from 14,000 square feet to 6,000 because we discovered that we had people who had an office that we really didn't need to be in an office.
Okay. Yeah.
So
assessment.
Yeah. It's
assessment. It made a great time for assessment. And under the ADA, does that job description require that you be at work? So this is a great time for an audit, job description audit. So what happens when the company wants to keep the workers at work? You come to work, whether it's required or not, we want you there, similar to the case. What's your advice to employers when they want to do that, but in fact, they're setting a foundation for a lawsuit?
Well, as an employer, you really need to think about how you're going to couch this, because the ADA is certainly one element there where you're saying is being present an essential function of your job. If as an employer you just really want people present, then you have to do a pretty good sales job, quite frankly, of saying our culture requires presence.
Okay.
We require people to be in the office area to interact. We are more creative together. We help each other. We bounce ideas off each other. Everyone has a better understanding of what's going on and what their neighbor is facing. There's less discord, there's less feeling of isolation. So, but you have to build that argument, and then you have to really think that through, in all likelihood, with legal counsel to see whether it will fly.
Yeah.
If it's just, I want you here, no.
Yeah. So people like Cindy is who you need to talk to about these events, because you can find yourself in some very awkward situations as an employer if you do not carefully think this through and make that business case for why you want an employer or employees to come in. Unbelievable. You recently presented at the National Business Institute, right? Covering a recent case involving an employer's failure to accommodate an employee's request for work from home. How did that?
There are quite a few of those, actually.
Okay, tell us,
because I check each week to see what has happened. And what we're seeing is, because the COVID-related cases are working forward, so we're seeing so many of those decisions now. And a lot of employers took the approach of, COVID is over, you're back to work. And you had a lot of employees who didn't take the vaccine, couldn't take the vaccine, had so many underlying conditions that they really were fragile. And so there are a lot of those cases that have come forward, and almost uniformly, with the exception of some hospital cases. The notion is the employer, unless being present is an essential function, unless there is something that you cannot do and that cannot be done with accommodation at home, then that's your only situation where if you say as an employer, I need you here to do this, and this is absolutely essential to the performance of your job, and we cannot accommodate it. That's the only time you're going to have an employer prevail.
Oh my goodness, you heard it here. You heard it. It may not be what you want to hear, but you heard it here. That is amazing, and it's going to send sound waves of information through the HR community and what we can and cannot do.
It's a lot of rethinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a lot of thinking, period. Is this essential? Well, and that's when you go back to your job description. You're like, we don't have that in the job description, you know?
Yeah, it's not there. And so if
How
it's
can
not
I
there,
say,
how can I say it if it's not there,
Right.
right? Wow, unbelievable. I can remember working from home during the pandemic. And when we did get back to going back to work, there were employees that said, I just don't feel comfortable right now. The COVID numbers are still very high. But you know what we did? Took counsel's advice, and we didn't force the employee to come in, especially when it didn't require the face-to-face contact. So absolutely. So we were on the right track, I guess. We were on the right track.
If you desperately needed those people in, if you felt for other reasons you needed them in, then you needed to go back and look at your job descriptions and say, we're doing an audit. And, we have discovered that there are duties that we did not include in our job descriptions, but which were being performed.
Yes.
And which are not being performed when you're away from the office. And so here are the new job descriptions, and here's what. There's more than one way to roam. You just have to.
We did an assessment. Here's the new job descriptions, which require you to be at work. So make it safe for you and do all of the work that needs to be done. So this is a perfect segue into remote workers, right? Are there any other interesting statistics? I talked about some, but are there some other interesting statistics?
Well, there's some
with regards to
interesting cases about remote workers, and I'm wondering how those are going to pan out as statistics. We're getting there. What we know is that there appears to be, for remote workers, they've really enjoyed the opportunity to work remotely, but it means that they can take a break and walk the dog, or they can take grandma to the grocery store during work hours, even, or they can
put in a load of clothes.
Right. Well, and there are the last statistics, I have not seen anything above like 30%, but there are people who are working multiple jobs while working remotely because they can do it.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's unbeknownst to their employers generally until the way that it ever came about, or it became sort of an item of interest, is that there was someone who wrote an article about he's traveling the country and working 3 jobs.
Wow.
And so he tripled his salary, his pay, but his employer thinks that he's working from home. And so I'm wondering if that person is now busted. But, it does kind of bring an interesting notion of, should we be monitoring our remote workers, and how can we do that?
Yes, and so that's the perfect question. So while employees love working from home, the question of the employer becomes, can that same amount of enthusiasm happen in productivity and getting work done? Can you get the work done and be remote? So what's your thoughts on that? Can we?
Well,
can a person do that? Can they be?
I think it really depends upon the integrity of the employee, honestly. Because, if you have a good employee who says, this is my time to work, and I'm going to, and I'm not opposed to, this is my time to work, I can get everything done, and maybe cut off 30 minutes earlier. So I'm not opposed to that if you've gotten everything done.
Right.
But it really has to do with the dedication of the employee. And a lot of employers are beginning to look at means of monitoring.
Okay.
And that is because they have called an employee and not gotten an answer, and called again, and they notice that each time they call, they don't ever get the employee, but the employee then calls them back.
Right.
Or if they email the employee or text them, they may not get an immediate response, which if they could walk down the hall and say, hey, can you do this, or where are we on this? So as an employer, when you begin to get why do you have to call me back every time? Why are you never at your phone when I'm calling you, ever? Then, the little bulb goes off and you're like, well, wonder if you're actually working.
Right.
During the times that you're supposed to be. And, then it becomes a question of how should I monitor this?
Right. So that's the magic question.
That
is the magic question. How far can employers go in monitoring the activities that's legal?
Right.
So I'm going to ask you some questions.
Well, absolutely.
All right. So can an employer mandate their time of the employee in front of the screen?
You can.
Of that.
You can say you are expected to be at your screen from the hours of, 8 to 4 with a break, 15-minute break, and and a 30-minute lunch break, and you can do that. You can do that.
Okay. Can you mandate the time on their breaks?
Well, you can tell them what you're paying for in terms of breaks.
Okay.
And you can say, we expect you, because you could require a clock in, clock out system through the computer where, you could say you've got to clock out for your break, clock back in from your break, clock out when you go to lunch, clock back in. And of course, what we know is if the employee is fudging any of that, then that is a terminable offense.
Right. And you have policies to support that. And the employee knows that before they partake in that type of action. Right. Yeah. All right. So can we mandate that the camera is on during work?
Well, you can mandate it.
Okay.
You can require it. You may get some sights you never wanted to see, but you can certainly, here I am in my PJs, the dog's in the background, and but you can say, during work hours, you're supposed to be present and define present as being on the screen with the camera turned on.
Okay. All right. So those are some of the things we can do. Here it is.
What can you not do?
What can we not do?
I knew that question was coming.
You know it was coming.
Well, what you cannot do kind of has to do with access. So first of all, the computers are the property of the employer.
Okay.
And employees are told that they have no reasonable expectation of privacy in what they're doing on those computers.
Okay.
So that means that, as an employer, I actually have the ability to pop on over to your computer and see what's going on. And it's not impossible to do random checks, you just create a random and make sure it's random, do it as some sort of, computer generated algorithm where I'm going to check on so-and-so and so-and-so. But you can see if they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, or if they've gotten off, and because part of your policy should say, no porn, no all this other stuff. You're allowed to use the computer for your personal matters, but only minimally, things like that. But if you're checking on your child's something from school, there's something like that, quick, done, not moving on. If you as an employer want to do that, what gets into the interesting part of this has to do with if you have an employee who seems to be ill, missing, absent, something.
A pattern of it.
And you're beginning to see something along the lines of they're absent always on Mondays, or they're absent always on Fridays. Right.
Yeah, that's a red flag.
If you as an employer don't have the policy in place that you have to be at work on the day after a holiday.
Yes.
Or before a holiday and after a holiday. If you don't have that policy, you probably need to consider putting it into play. With some opt-out provisions if there's a reason, like if they're on vacation during that whole period, or if they're sick, prior and after, and there's documented evidence of that. But if you are looking at the situation and you keep going, this is the person I call during this time just to say, how are you and when can we expect you to return? Or there's something or if you have a policy where 2 days in a row of absence. After that, you have to have a doctor's note, but it's always just 2 days and they're always back.
Right.
You know, there's all those great little triggers where you begin to go, I think they're playing the system.
Absolutely.
So if you suspect that, what can you do?
Right.
Well, you start with you are ill a lot.
Okay.
You know, or you've been absent a lot. Is there something that we need to do to be able to help you, because we want to be able to count on you being here?
Yes.
You know, I always start with I'm here to help approach, because perhaps there is something going on. Perhaps they have struggled to be able to make it up until, you know, some sort of break, and their health is not good and they're struggling. You know, maybe we need to talk about an altered schedule or something of that nature.
Right.
And this is kind of the most interesting, I think, thing that's happened recently, which is when another employee comes into you and says, "You seen this picture?" And they're in Miami. You know, in their, you know.
You're in Miami, but you're supposed to be working remotely, but we see pictures at the beach. What is this about, right?
Right. Or you're sick and you're in Miami. You're like, I don't suppose, wait. How did that happen? You got on the plane sick and gave everyone else, no. Let's think that one over. But that does happen.
Oh, it does.
And what's interesting is most employees, if they do it much, apparently if they're foolish enough to do it, they are foolish enough to brag about it.
Oh, and they tell everybody.
Yeah, and if they tell everybody, then somebody will surely, the news will come back to you.
Yes.
That's the first thing.
Yeah, that's that news, that news trail that comes around. Rumor mill. That's what they call it. Rumor mill will come around. So HR does have a way, or does influence how these policies can be, I guess, distributed fairly and have the correct fairness and legal protocols. HR can be an influence in how that works. Would you agree with that?
They really must be, because you're the starting point in terms of assuring that whatever we're doing for one person, we need to make that our policy across the board.
Across the board, yes. Yes.
To ensure fairness and that there is no disparity in treatment.
Okay.
But go ahead.
Yeah. So what's your professional opinion on how can HR make the biggest impact on this thing of remote work? How can we make the largest impact?
I think you need to understand who your employees are and what your work is, because this is not a one size fits all.
Yes.
So you really want to know what they're doing, how it's been done, if there are tweaks that can be made to it. And then, I mean, I'm a big fan of talking with teams and sort of saying, talk to me about work. How is it going? What's different working remotely? Do you feel you're productive? You know, are there areas where productivity could be improved? And while I know that they're not all going to go, oh, this is terrible, please bring me back to work. But if you listen, you can get some ideas about tweaks that can be made.
Yes.
But you can also send the message too that just because we're not all together does not mean that you don't matter and we don't want to hear what's going on with you. It also doesn't mean that you are not still held to the same level of performance.
Absolutely.
Because we still serve the same people, or we still serve the same customers, and we have to maintain that level of service. That's our business.
And that's our business, that's our brand, and that's what we're trying to do. And it's so important as leaders in HR and HR in general that employees have ownership and have a voice in what happens.
Yes.
A lot of times, the employees have the answers to a lot of the questions that the leaders have. So it's always good to ask their opinion. It's always good to give them a voice. I promise you, it works almost every time.
It does.
Every time. Now, last question. Is this remote work thing the future, or is it a fad?
Well,
What do you think?
I think that a hybrid work environment is in all likelihood the future. And it's because businesses are businesses. They have a bottom line.
Yes.
And so if you can pay less for rent, and if you can still get the same level of work done, then you have saved yourself. You've improved your bottom line. And I don't think any business is going to step away from that.
Wow. Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that. You heard it. You heard it here. It is not a fad. It is here forever. Remote work. Wow. Thank you so much,
thank you,
Cindy, for coming out and educating the community about what is important about remote work now. But Memphis area legal services, people need to know how to contact you, because this is such a wonderful community and such a wonderful service and resource. How do we reach you?
It's 523-8822.
Okay.
And if you go to our website, it's www.malsi, M-A-L-S-I, because it's Memphis Area Legal Services Incorporated.
Okay.
.org. And in a moment of something, I put my cell phone number on there, because sometimes we have people who don't get through, or sometimes we have people whose need is urgent. And sometimes I just like to hear from the people we serve.
From the people we serve. What a heart. That's so true. That's a heart. Heartfelt. And so she is there for you. Memphis Area Legal Services is there for you. Wow. So we now know what to do. We have learned a lot today about the trends and legalities regarding remote work and what the future may hold. As HR professionals, our focus is to ensure the rights of employees, and whether working on site or remotely, and that the employee experience is one of trust, care, and relationship. Be sure to watch Let's Talk HR with Dr. Deneen every second and fourth Friday on the YouTube channel of the same name. Please note, you can watch Let's Talk HR with Dr. Deneen and prior episodes at any time. Go to the YouTube channel and type in the talk show title. But if you want to be notified when new episodes post, be sure to subscribe at no fee to the channel and click on the notification bell. This is HR TV. I'm Dr. Deneen, and I want to talk HR with you. HR forever. See you next time.